Hello and welcome to this video. Who is the hardest man in rock? Or woman, although there's no women on this list, so we don't have to worry about them. I mean, women can't fight like men, despite what the mainstream movie world tries to tell us nowadays, you know. They can't. I don't care what anyone says. So it's 10 men. Call me a sexist if you want.
You're a sexist.
But that's the way it's worked out. I've used I've pondered on this list for a good few minutes now, and I think I have the objective 10 hardest people in music, the 10 hardest musicians of all time. I've got the list here in front of me, so I will now go through the list. Some of you might think this is a bit silly. You know, you might come here and go, I don't come here for this sort of thing, Andy. I come here for interesting philosophical talks on music and stuff about prog and jazz and all the interesting music. And then you keep coming on and doing these videos like this. But the problem is, you know, I know there's 10,000 views here in 24 hours, without a doubt, 10,000. I'll be waking up tomorrow morning, checking these stats, and there it'll be. Oh, it's a lovely morning today. Lovely morning. Very fresh. What shall I do? Oop. I wonder how that video, the 10 hardest men in rock did. Let's have a look, shall we? So just go to the stats. Oh yes, an easy 10,000. That's the way it is. It's not my doing. It's your doing. Now you could have a go at it, you know, because you hid behind your bloody keyboard, aren't you? You little keyboard warriors. You hid behind your keyboard. But face to face, if you were speaking to me like that and criticising me in such a way, I might not take it lightly, and I might push back, and you might get aggressive, and I might get aggressive. And there's happened many a time through history. Two gentlemen may get pushed to, indulging in the art of conflict, you know, and this is not a good thing. I don't condone it whatsoever. Now, me being a musician, I have never been that good in that department when it actually comes to fisticuffs. You know, and most of us aren't. And what you're going to get from this list is actually why musicians aren't great at the old fisticuffs. So I would have to enlist someone if I was in such a situation. So think of this, if you were up for a ruck with someone, but you could bring in a musician to help you with that ruck, a ruck helper, what ruck helper would you enlist, you see? And this is why this list is useful. And I have 10 contenders here. I've ranked them from quite hard to extremely hard. And we're going to go through them, and I'm going to justify my reasons for putting them there. And you might learn a little bit about these artists that you didn't know before. Are you ready to start? Right, come on. Let's get down to it. I'm a bit hot. I'm not really squared up to you, but I take my coat off. Right. Are we ready to go? Bit of subliminal advertising there for my friend's organisation. That's all good. Right, at number 10, I have the king of rock and roll.
What's the matter? Aren't American sickles good enough for you?
You don't dig world trade, college boy, after all the economics they've tried to shove into you?
Get off, buddy.
Come on, come on.
No, that's karate.
That goes with the sickle. Come on.
Now, most kings don't fight. In the olden days, a king would fight, wouldn't they? In the old days, they'd be in there, you know, slicing and slashing along with with their army. You know, many a king died on the like King Harold with the arrow in the eye and all that bit, you know. And but nowadays, you know, if we had got our King Charles here in England to, you know, in be indulged in, it'd be bloody useless. Although his sons, I mean, they're both army trained, and that makes a big difference. Harry could handle himself without a doubt, you know, and he's fiery, isn't he? Because he's ginger. Old Harry is. Prince Harry's ginger, and the gingers are known for fighting. I've spoken about this on another video, and I've upset many people in the ginger community. But I'm actually explaining, you know, that it's like the sort of carroty fire which runs through their veins in their DNA, is aggressive by nature, isn't it? That's known. And that's why, you know, we have always in the United Kingdom gone to Scotland to find our, you know, soldiers. because the Scottish people tend to be ginger.
During the moment, I don't know, a wee bit of sightseeing.
I've done all this joke before, straight in using old material. No, Elvis Presley. Right, now why has Elvis Presley got on the list, right? Well, he grew up in the Deep South, didn't he? Right, so he must have grown up in quite an aggressive world, and he had an interest in the old black music, didn't he? So he was always crossing the tracks, as we say, and checking out that, you know. So he got this handsome white bloke crossing the tracks, and the other white people down there must have looked at him and thought, why is he, you know, they would have called him an N lover, you know what I'm saying? They would have said he was an N lover, and they might have squared up to him. And yet, look how pretty his face was. No one landed a punch on that face. Now, it could be it's because he never got into any fights at all, but I find that difficult to believe, especially with those moves he's got. He was very fast, you know. I believe, like Muhammad Ali, he could also, you know, fly like a butterfly and sting like a bee, or dance like a butterfly, float like a butterfly. He could do all that, right? But then when you take someone from the Deep South like Elvis Presley and then give him an army training, which they did, remember, right at the peak of his powers, right at the peak, he was taken away, old head shaved, and he was put into the army, right? Now, if that wasn't enough, he then left the army, came back, and he literally did come back, you know, and he was dressed all in his leather, which is fighting gear straight off, isn't it? You know, it's hard to land a punch when someone's leather clad. And he was the exponent of the old kung fu, wasn't it? Or whatever the martial arts was he studied. Now, there's a whole bunch of musicians. I'm sure you're going to say, oh, Tommy Lee's done bloody martial arts. Or that bloke, Maynard, what's he called? Maynard Keynes from Tool. What's he called? Maynard Fruit Gums. I don't know. The Maynard bloke. Keaton Maynard from Tool. He does a bit of the old martial arts. Well, I could have filled it up with those types. I'm sure they're quite good. All of them. But I think Elvis with the... So that's how we start genuine. I'm going to start with some sort of famous ones. I'm going to get much more detailed as we go. I know I'll give... You know, these videos, you've got to start with something that somebody everybody knows. Now, let's move on now to the great debate. Who would win in a fight between the Beatles and the Rolling Stones? Right, well, it's obviously the Beatles, isn't it? The Rolling Stones are all a bunch of lip-wristed, you know, skinny middle-class types, all floppy, you know. And this is one of the things that affects your judgment when looking through the 1960s musicians. Of course, Jimi Hendrix as well, you know, a black gentleman grown up in America having to fight all the racism, and what does he do? He ends up going into that parachute corps or whatever it is. I mean, that's tough going into that. You know, when he was trained up, then he jumps out of an aeroplane, breaks his leg, and he couldn't play it, so he has to become the greatest guitarist in rock. You know, but the fact he could jump out of a bloody aeroplane, how many of our guitar heroes could do that? I mean, he couldn't do that well because he obviously hurt his foot. But the point is, he was trained. But Jimi Hendrix then became, he's too floppy, isn't he? You just push him over, and he wouldn't want to fight anyway. You know, and when you're looking at the hippie types, you've got to... decide whether they truly are like that. Hendrix was a proper hippie. He was all floppy and didn't want to have a fight, you know. I'm a lover and I'm not a fighter. That's definitely it. But some of them, they were playing lip service. I think the Beatles are a little bit like that. Now, apparently, George Harrison, although quiet, could handle himself in a fight. I find that difficult to believe. Paul McCartney, I think he would probably talk his way out of it. But with Ringo Starr and John Lennon, we've got two tough bloody Scousers there. Now, if you aren't from England, a Scouser is the name for someone from Liverpool. Now, a few years ago, we had a comedy show in which there was it was a fast show, I think, and they had this thing they used to do called the Scousers.
Hey, do you want a cup of tea, Barry?
I don't, I've just had one.
Hey, well, I'm making one. Do you want one or not?
Jesus, do you have to make such a fuss about it?
I'm not making a friggin' fuss about it!
Make a cup of tea or don't. Just get off my friggin' back.
Don't talk to me like that! I'll break your friggin' neck, all right? Come on, calm down.
And the joke with the Scousers is they couldn't do anything without, you know, getting into a fight. So there's many towns in the UK where we have a sort of fighting breed. But the Scousers are, without a doubt, good fighters, without a doubt. Now, both Ringo and John Lennon in their early days were in gangs. Now, John Lennon reports that he used to wake up, not remembering the night before and covered in blood. Now, when they went off to Hamburg and they were working in those clubs, they must have been able to look after themselves. Now, Ringo, I'm sure, could look after himself. And anybody who is, milling around Liverpool in the 1960s with a name like Ringo and a fistful of rings is because he could probably administer, a bit of the old bejeweled fist if he needed to. But I don't feel, and this is totally my intuition, and you can disagree if you want, I don't feel that Ringo had the killer instinct, but John Lennon did, and that's who I've got at number 9, is John Lennon.
I don't know much
did
about
an advertising campaign for peace.
Very
Can you
big
understand that?
No, I can't.
A very big advertising campaign for peace.
And self-aggrandizing.
Well, you think
Are
it's...
you advertising
Oh,
John Lennon or
do you want nice middle-class gestures for peace
Maybe.
and intellectual
It's worked in
manifestos
America.
written by a lot of half-witted intellectuals and nobody reads them? That's the trouble with the peace movement.
For all his give peace a chance, and all you need is love, and sitting in bed and growing his great big beard and getting his tackle out on the front of album covers and all the stuff he did that seems like the sort of thing a hippie would do, right? I feel like if he needed to, he would get stuck in. And I think Lennon on his own could have finished off the Rolling Stones, all of them. The only one I would have think that could come back was Brian Jones. Always seemed a little bit testy, but the rest of them, I mean, Mick Jagger, with those moves like Jagger that he had, although in his case they were his moves, they weren't like Jagger because they were actually his moves, but they're famous because there's a song like that. With all that thing he's doing, I mean, he'd be hard to lay a punch. So he could probably move around a lot. But, Keith Richards, slow-moving targets, really. It doesn't matter how far you get your legs apart, it doesn't mean that you can't be unbalanced by a hefty Liverpudlian fist, bejeweled or not. So, do you understand how this works now? If you understand how this list works, are you still watching after this? Bloody hell. Right, now we get more detailed. I, being Andy Edwards and having this channel, don't just want to pull from mainstream rock bands and bands that everybody knows. I ain't going to go and put the Gallagher brothers on or any of these people just because they boast a bit about fighting. No, this has to be done properly. Now, we come up against a fact that I have unearthed here, which I don't think has ever been publicly said before. This is where you get information that is totally unique to my channel. The world of jazz rock, which we cover here, is full of people who can fight, and in some cases can really fight. Whereas the world of progressive rock just does not contain anybody that could fight at all. And I have sat here thinking they need to have a progressive rock person on this or they won't be happy. Now, the best I could come up with was Fish from Marillion. Now, why? Because he's 6'6" and Scottish. And I didn't feel that was enough, of a qualification to get on the list. Although I wouldn't want to take on Fish. Maybe now. I know he's quite a heavy smoker, so he'd probably be a bit puffed now. He's got old if I started to have a go at him. But I'd get quite puffed as well. There wouldn't be much of a fight. And I go in low, you see, with Fish. That's the thing. It's like, unless he's got the skills and the power, that height I could utilise against him. Down in low, shoulder into the guts, up to the fish tackle. Do you get it? The fish tackle. Fist right up to the fish tackle, grab his knees, pull him back, and then jump on his head. That's how I'd sort him out. Who are you going to pick to fight from the world of progressive rock? Who are you going to have? Steve Howe? Who are you going to have? Come on. The Canterbury lot? Soft Machine? Who are you going to have? Right? They're all too fey. They're too fey. I could have delved into the rock world, I suppose. I couldn't be asked going there. Couldn't be asked. I mean, the Italians, they can be a bit feisty, but there's all show with them, and they're a bit cowardly, aren't they, the old Italians? Take them out of it. The French, maybe Magma. I don't know. Christian Vander, don't know. It's really hard. So you can see that I just could not come up with a progressive rock person, but the jazz fusion lot, I had to chuck so many out, and I've only in the end put 2 on here because I knew if I filled it up with jazz rock fusions. But I think as a genre, jazz rock fusion may be the hardest of the genres. I don't know why that is. At number 8, I have Joe Zawinul. Joe Zawinul from Weather Reports. So, why do I think he's so hard that he's come up at number 8? Joe Zawinul was born in Austria in 1932, all right? He grew up, you know, at a time of the Depression and all sorts of things were going on in Europe. And then they got invaded by the Nazis and he had to survive in war-torn Austria as a youngster. He would be out there in the rubble, you know, looking for, you know, bits of food or whatever. And one day he was down there with his mates and they're working away and this explosion goes off. And when the dust clears, he sees his mate's legs sticking out of the rubble. So he tries to pull him out. And as he pulls it out, it's just 2 pairs of legs. That's a true story. So there are interesting facts on this, although quite horrific, and not really the sort of facts that fit in to a video like this, which is so humorous. But when we're dealing with violence, we may have to open up that dark door. And with Zawinul, you feel that he is wrought from a dark place, don't we? We definitely feel that with Zawinul. But Zawinul was also a very keen boxer. Now, my original intent was to put Miles Davis on here, you know, but I feel with Miles Davis, it was a bit of a show. Yes, he could box, and I'm sure, you know, he had a handy left hook and he could administer it. But again, Miles was quite small, but Zawinul's not small, right? Now, the reason I've put him on is because I have watched so many Weather Report videos. When Zawinul is playing just the keyboards, just playing jazz rock keyboards, he doesn't look like Herbie Hancock or Chick Corea, does he? Look at him. Now, if that isn't someone squaring up for a fight, I don't know what is, right? He seemed to be a very aggressive man. Now, Jacko, I don't think was a fighter, but he was a certain sort of type that would probably instigate a lot of fights with his ways. And of course, we go into, this is a very dark section here, is it? Obviously, Jacko died in a fight. So, I mean, is this humorous, Andy? You know, this is the trouble when you just come on and free associate. You've all been having a giggle with stuff like John Lennon, and we got to Joe Zawinul, you know, just the fact that he does a bit of boxing and looks like he's a bit tough when he's playing keyboards, you know, I think is enough to stick him on the list. Here we just move on. But that's what we deal with. See, once we get into the jazz rock fusion, a darkness comes in, a darkness, terrifying darkness. And you feel like there's untold aggression underneath there, don't you? Do you know what I'm saying? You feel like Tony Williams, you know, or, I don't know, Alphonse Mouzon, or who else have we got in jazz rock? I mean, John McLaughlin, I don't think would be that good in a fight, but he's from Yorkshire, you see. I don't know. But there seems to be so many, for me, that they could handle themselves when I look at them. Hiram Bullock, I mean, look at him. He was a well-built man, wasn't he? But got no evidence he could actually fight. But we do with Joe Zawinul. He was a boxer. He was tough, you know, right up until the day he died. I think he was training as a boxer. So that's who I've got at number 8. I'm going to move on quickly onto the ones that are more funny. So at number 7, I thought, what lead singer are we going to have? Now, originally, I thought of Paul Rodgers from Free and Bad Company, because I know he was always up for a fight. My sort of inside knowledge of the music industry, the things I can't actually, you know, say where I've been told things in confidence, but I can report what I've learned from them, you know, basically evidence that you can't question, has brought me to the conclusion that Paul Rodgers was a bit of a fighter. And he used to have a real problem with John Bonham, apparently. They were both signed to the same label. And he used to pick fights with John Bonham and get very aggressive. But the thing is, all John Bonham had to do was just grab him on the top of the head and hold him there, and he'd be swinging away trying to get to him because he was small. Now, a lot of the aggressive rock stars that we have are too small to really be effective. All of three were like that. They are all too little, except for Simon Kirke. I don't know how tall he is, but when you see them all, they're all tiny. The small faces, I mean, that lot, they should be good in a fight. Rod Stewart, I would imagine. You know, I don't think so, really. But again, too small. There's a lot of small people in rock music. And the reason is because, you know, small people look better on television. I've always thought this, you know. On top of the pops, they just look more, they're easier to get into the camera. So the music world has attracted a lot of smaller people. Even though I know he was always up for a ruck, Paul Rodgers is not on the list. Now, I remember I read this gentleman's autobiography, a wonderful book. And in it, he reported his youth at school. And this bloke lived to fight. It's, of course, Roger Daltrey.
What happened was he was totally off balance.
Right.
The guitar went through and he kind of stood up and he's wobbling about. Then he started throwing punches. And Pete, bless him,
You can't
he
fight.
writes great songs.
You're right.
But never get in the ring, Pete. And he threw a right and it went past. You know, I dodged it and it was just the perfect uppercut. And all the balances and, you know, the energy was all connected in the right place.
Yeah.
I really did think I'd killed him.
Yeah. Wasn't he like in a coma for 2 days or something?
Well, he blamed me for years that I created the bald spot on the back of his head.
Now, you get the feeling with The Who, they're in a different league to the Rolling Stones. They're in a different league, aren't they? They could handle themselves, you know. And it's the perfect fighting team, isn't it, when you think about it, right? You've got the highly articulate Pete Townsend. You don't want to get into wordplay with Pete because he's gonna like, you know, somebody with a rapier. He's gonna make you look foolish, right? Then you have the quiet one, John Entwistle. What's he like? I don't know what he's like. Can he fight? I don't know. He's not saying a word. Then you got the nutter Keith Moon. He's all over the place, and he might not be good at fighting at all, but he won't care. He'll be steaming in whatever. You know, he's going to be dealing with all sorts. But the truth is, right down the middle is Roger Daltrey. And Roger Daltrey, right? I love that name, Daltrey. You can't say it without sounding Cockney, can you? Roger Daltrey. Daltrey, right? So Daltrey, right, when you read his biography, every bloody day, anybody did anything and he was in there. Like a bloody football hooligan. Like a Millwall fan. Chomping at the bit, ready to bloody put these up. And look at him, you know. He didn't have the chiseled features of a Robert Plant, did he? He had the blonde looks, but it was much more a bit of the old that with old Roger Daltrey, wasn't it? He could bloody fight, you know. And you can tell this because apparently when he had to sing things like, you know, I'm a boy, but my mum won't admit it and all that type of stuff, he didn't used to like it. He used to go, yeah, Pete, why have you written this song like that? Well, I thought it was an interesting lyric, didn't I? You know, but I don't want to be sat there saying, I'm a boy. I am a boy. I know, well, you are a boy. I know, but I don't like it. And I'm going to get, you up for a ruck? Well, if you want to, but I'll get you with my rapier wit. Oh, I can't stand your rapier wit. I cannot. Well, don't bloody complain about my lyrics then. You know, and John Entwistle sat there in the background, you know, totally stoic. And then the next thing, Keith Moon blows up a toilet. This, for me, is close to being the hardest band, but this isn't the hardest band. I put one band on this list. I thought I'll have one band. I mean, it's almost like a distant list, the hardest band, because now you got a team working, and that team has to work together in a certain way. And most bands are undone with some sort of fave fop, you know, in the band. Most rock bands have a fave fop in there, and more than one often. So, you know, I don't know. But Daltrey definitely deserves a high place on this at number 7. Right, I have championed the Liverpudlian, you know, pugilists. I have championed the London Rookers. All great cities with great fighters. But there ain't any place like Birmingham.
I was told to get there before it all blew away. It was spectacular cherry blossom time in Birmingham's Bourneville. Riding the express elevator to the top of one of the city's highest buildings, this is the view that nearly took my breath away.
let's be honest. Okay? We don't boast in the Midlands. We don't boast about stuff. We don't. Right? We sit there, you know, never once for boasting. Right? But in the 1960s, the Cray twins decided to come up to Birmingham to take on the Birmingham people and take it over. And they came up against a gang. Well, not a gang. I don't even want to talk to them about them really, because they never got caught this lot. That's the other thing, they didn't get caught. But there was a well, I don't even want to say. I'm not going to say. Scared, aren't you? And yeah, they said, this is what I'm on about. You know, I don't want to say them. You know, because my future, all of it, all of my future might be snuffed out if there's still some, I know, step out the line, you know. But anyway, the point is the Cray twins couldn't get into Birmingham because they weren't hard enough. That's the bottom line of that story, you know. So obviously, with the Birmingham bands, you can take a pick Judas Priest, you know, ELO, right, Slade up in Wolverhampton, you know, every single one, even Duran Duran. If you think of Duran, if you think of all the sort of fey foppish, you know, lip-wristed, when they got roughs coming out of your sleeve, you know, and all that bit, the new romantics. Who's the artist of that? Like, it's Duran Duran, isn't it? Roger Taylor, bloody, I mean, Simon Le Bon, I don't think he would be so good. Or, I mean, Nick Rhodes, maybe not. UB40, I mean, bloody hell. UB40. We are overrun in Birmingham with bands that were able to administer violence if they needed to. Not that they did. But of course, we do have the mighty Black Sabbath, right? And I have heard so many stories about their guitarist, Tony Iommi. Not only did he invent heavy metal, right? Not only did he invent heavy metal, but he was always up for a fight. And he enjoyed a good fight. And I've been told this many a time, that he enjoyed a good fight. Now, why is that? Well, Tony Iommi, you can tell by the surname, is from Italian descent. And he's... Bloody hell. Sorry. Hello? You all right, mate? It's Brummy Dave. You're right, Brummy Dave. Yeah, I know. I've got on to Tony Iommi. Have you got a story about him that I can tell them?
Yeah, I'll tell you about it.
Go on then. Go on then.
He was had some mushy pies, and he could have some mushy pies.
Really?
Yeah, he was having some mushy pies, you see.
No, he did it, didn't he?
Yeah, he was good, I couldn't believe it, you see. Yeah, and then he goes, you could have my mushy pies then. You could
Really?
have my mushy pies, he said. You could have it, I couldn't believe it. Pushed out mushy pies right up your nose. He could have mushy pies, I couldn't believe it. Right, but it was unbelievable, it was. He couldn't believe it now.
All right, all right.
Yeah, and then he won't believe it. He was going on it. Like this, and then he was going on shoulder that way. He was going to push him down to get break his face off, and he was scratching his face.
I'm all right, mate. I just feel a bit sick.
That was a bit bad, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, bad. He was bad.
Yeah.
Bad.
You want me to tell them that?
Yeah, go on, tell it them.
That's pretty horrible.
Nah, go on, tell it them.
All right. Anyway, how you doing, Dave? You're right.
I'm all right,
You haven't
mate.
been on the channel for a while,
Nah,
have you?
I haven't. I'll come on one of the days.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
You've had to keep your head low.
I have.
I know. He had to keep his head low. After my live stream when Sharon Osbourne shut me down, right, it was him. It was when Brummy Dave was on, right? He got a bit annoyed because Geezer wouldn't let him backstage at the old Black Sabbath Back to the Beginning gig. So he came on my live stream. Sharon Osbourne started him. I had a copyright strike because of Dave. I can't hold it against him.
Nah, you could. Oh, it was my fault.
Yeah, you're still there.
Yeah.
All right, mate. Yeah, you look after yourself.
All right, mate. See ya.
Yeah, mushy pays for tea. Mushy pays. I can't say it like you. All right, bye-bye. Oh, he's a good sticker. Oh, yeah. So, I don't think I can tell you that story. It involved all sorts of nastiness, really. Shall we move on? Right, so, as we journey around England to all the sort of violent towns, we've done Birmingham, we've done Liverpool, we've done London, I think, you know. We have not ventured up north. Now, a town that I would love to bring into the mix would be Sheffield. And, of course, the great, you know, new age of British heavy metal band turned, you know, hair metal posers, Def Leppard. But don't let that posing, you know, fool you. Now, the thing with Def Leppard is, as the story goes, Def Leppard, being from Sheffield, were all good fighters. They all know how to handle themselves, right? They form Def Leppard, they get into all sorts of rucks. But their first guitarist that they had, he was not so good at the old fighting, and he was the weak link. Rick Allen was something else. He would go in both arms swinging into a fight, no problem. But the guitarist that I can't remember the name of, he was no good. So they get their heads together and they say, we need to get a replacement for him, right? And so they kicked him out and they brought in somebody else who actually is not from Sheffield, if I'm right, although he might be, but I actually don't know, right? But the guy they brought in is a bloke called Phil Collen. Not Phil Collins. I haven't put Phil Collins on the list. He's no good in a fight. I don't think... he's a Cockney, you know. He can talk the talk. He did play Buster, the great chain robber. You know, so he might have picked up some tips there doing that. You know, a bit of the old method acting. Not Phil Collins, though. Phil Collen. Now, Phil Collen, he's about 70 years old. He bloody bodybuilds, and he's something like a Muay Thai fighter, which is basically kickboxing. You know the great Billy Moore? The great Billy Moore. Am I a fan of Billy Moore? The great Billy Moore, right, who was also one of them Thai fighters. Well, if you see this film, Billy Moore decides to take up a guitar. He's going straight to the top of my list. Old Billy Moore is. Bloody hell. But he learnt the old Muay Thai boxing, and Phil Collins is an exponent of it. So that means at the age of 70 odd, he looks like this. And that's why he's so high. Can you imagine him coming at you? Phil Collins. You know. And he's a really good guitarist. That's why they got him in. That's why he could play good guitar solos, and he could add as a major league player into Def Leppard as a fighting force, which of course was the right thing to do, because tragically, as soon as he joined, within a few years, poor old Rick Allen lost his arm. And although he's still up for it, you know, when they say I'd fight with one hand tied behind my back, well, he doesn't have to tie one hand behind his back because he's only got one hand, hasn't he? Def Leppard actually made the greatest biopic in history, music biopic. Forget bloody Bohemian Rhapsody and that one that Elton John did and all that, and the Monkey one Robbie Williams did. Forget all those. Forget Elvis the movie. Forget them all. The greatest is the Def Leppard story. I'm going to show you a scene from that film now when Rick Allen loses his arm, and you will see the sadness that is encapsulated, the horror of that situation. And you will understand why it was so essential, if they did get into a ruck, to have someone like Phil Collen in the band.
Hurts. I'm an off-duty policeman. May I be of some assistance?
Please call an ambulance right away.
I'm a drummer. A famous drummer.
You're gonna be all right.
I want my mum.
Right, let's move on, shall we? At number 4, I decided to place, I thought, who's the hardest band in history? Like I said, I've just been through a number that you could have. The Who are definitely up there. They're a hard band. The Kinks, I reckon they could have a bit of a scrap but they had more scraps with themselves, didn't they? No, I've gone through it, and I think this is quite obvious. It's Madness.
Hey, you! Don't watch that. Watch this.
Now, Madness a bunch of working class Cockney lads who were involved in petty crime, and many of them ended up in prison. Now, I'm not saying they're the best fighters in the world, but I've never been to prison. But I imagine going to prison hones your fighting abilities. So there's a couple in there that would have honed their fighting abilities. But the thing with madness, there's so many of them. There's so many of them, right? So if you end up, going into some sort of conflict with madness, they're going to be coming at you from all sides. Now, as we know, madness could move together. They could move as one. Like an evil armed caterpillar coming at you, right? All synchronous moves and sort of two-tone dancing. Now, Madness, of course, being an old two-tone band, the most violent gig I ever went to, ever in my life, was to see the Selector and Bad Manners, right? And it was when Bad Manners came on. And me not being a fighter, I was up down the front, and it was very, very aggressive, let us say. And then suddenly, the dance sort of moved to a point where instead of just dancing, everyone was punching each other. And someone punched me in the face. And me being an English gentleman and a musician, I said, "Excuse me, sir, could you desist with your aggressive act?" But the bloke, he didn't desist, and he tried to swing at me again. So I decided to run away. And I remember running away up to the back of the audience and then watching the gig very quietly, not wanting to be seen. That was Bad Manners, right? But of course, Bad Manners' lead singer was a bloke called Buster Bloodvessel. And he probably would have bust a blood vessel. So actually in a fight, I think he might have been good for about 40 seconds, but then he would have been very red-faced and, I mean, he's had to lose a bit of weight, old Buster has. Madness is not like that. They were lean, mean fighting machine. They got that bloke coming in on the wire, from above. They're coming at you at all angles, right? You can't fend them off. So that's who I've put at number 4 as a band. It's definitely Madness. Okay, right, we're now on to the heavy hitters, the 3. These 3 are in a class of their own. All 3 of them are in a class of their own. And when we get to number 1, this is so obvious that it's going to be incredible. There's no arguing with this. I'm not going to say, I didn't know who to put. This is obvious, right? So at number 3, we have Leadbelly.
What's your name?
Hughie Ledbetter.
Ledbetter. Leadbelly.
Look at him. Bloody hell. That's a hard bloke, right? He's had a hard life, isn't he? Look at him. He's had a hard life. Leadbelly is from the golden age of early music. He was there, he's a witness to it all, born in 1885 or something like that, And he was there, he travelled, he knew all the early blues greats. Now, back then in America, in that sort of Jim Crow-fueled, violent times, if you were a black fella, you had to be awake to what was going on around you. Leadbelly was. You stepped out of line before you knew it. There was a gang of white people grabbing you, taking you off, stringing you up and dangling you off a tree. Right? Leadbelly wrote this into a song about the Scottsboro boys, the poor old Scott. I don't know, old video on this. The old Scottsboro boys, there they are on a bloody train, mind their own business. They probably just, give someone a dirty look. And when they arrive at the bloody station, they get into a great big fight, and then they get accused of being it, and they got up for bloody being executed, nothing. But anyway, Leadbelly wrote a song about it, and he says in that, stay woke. Woke is about being aware of what's going on around you and knowing what's coming your way. It's been bloody appropriated by everybody. First the bloody identitarian left, and now the bloody, the right wing, and it hasn't got its power. But this man here, he's the one who, invented the bloody word. Now, he got into all sorts of rucks. And I think in around about 1917, he got into a ruck with his cousin over a bird or something, a lady. Sorry, I'm talking. I've gone all sort of pretend Larry, haven't I? And don't do that, Andy. You're not like Leadbelly. Don't try and join in and be in his camp. You know, like the little bloke behind him. Go on, Leadbelly. Go and get in there. You fight him. No, I'm not. I won't do that. So Leadbelly, you know, they got into a ruck. Now Leadbelly, we're not talking bloody Roger Daltrey or Tony Iommi. Yeah, he just killed the bloke. All right, now how many people he killed, I don't know. But he definitely killed him and he went to prison. And whilst in prison, he would entertain the fellow prisoners in there. Imagine them, they're all there in their white stripy suits, sat round. And Leadbelly's getting up and impressing them with with his songs, you know, from the Deep South, the history of American folk music embodied in Leadbelly. He was a great guitarist, great singer. Then two namby-pamby middle-class types come down. We love the black people in America with their wonderful folk music, and we're going to document it and make sure it's special, and we're going to patronise them, but still celebrate them at the same time. And Alan Lomax and John Lomax, the dad and son, John's the dad, they turn up in the prison, and they walk in, and they see Leadbelly get up, starts performing, and then they go, Can we take, this is actually true, Leadbelly then finished his sentence. Everyone thought that the Lomaxes got him out of prison, but no, I think he finished early for good behaviour. Right, and then they turned around and said, Mr. Leadbelly, we would like to make you famous with our middle-class white ways. But if you do that, you've got to appease yourself publicly on film and promise not to be a naughty black man and kill people ever again. And they did this. This is the film they did.
Just once more, Leadbelly. Irene, good night. Irene, good night. Good night, Irene. Good night, Irene. Night is Jane Marie. That's fine, Leadbelly. You're a fine songster. I've never heard so many good Negro songs. Thank you, sir, boss. I sure hope you send Governor O'Callaghan a record of that song I made up about him, because I believe you're telling me to lose. Leadbelly, I don't know this governor. You mustn't expect too much of me. Well, Governor Patton up of Texas, he turned me loose when he heard the song that I made up about him. So you're in the Texas penitentiary too, Leadbelly? Yes, sir, it was 35 years for murder, but it was my fault. A man is trying to cut my head off. Mighty bad, Leadbelly. I believe Governor O'Callaghan, if you just send him a record of that song, I believe you're turning me loose. Leadbelly, I'll try it. Thank you, sir, boss. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Yes, Mr. John Lomax staying here. He's in room 109. Is that on the first floor? Yep. Hey, hold on a minute. Good night. Boss, here I is. Leadbelly, what are you doing here? Oh, you trying to run me away, boss. I came here to be your man. I got to work for you the rest of my life. You got me out of that Louisiana pen. You can't work for me. You're a mean boy. You killed 2 men. Please don't talk that way, boss. Have you got a pistol? No, I got a knife. Let me see it. What do you do with that thing? I'll use it on somebody to bother you, boss. Please, boss, take me with you. You never have to tie your shoestrings anymore if you let me, long as you keep me with you. All right, Leadbelly. I'll try you. Thank you, sir, boss. Thank you. I'll drive you all over the United States, and I'll sing all songs for you. You be my big boss, and I'll be your man. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
And so Leadbelly, I know, I mean, Leadbelly, he doesn't believe that, does the old Leadbelly? I believe right till the day he died, 1949, was it, when he finally popped his clog, he could have had a fight. Now, of course, Leadbelly is in the, God, for rock music and rock and roll and all that bit. I mean, Leadbelly is like, he's a giant. I like the facts, and I shouldn't, but I do. I like the fact that this guy that really Created it all, really. And he created it all because they found him in a bloody prison. You couldn't make this up. That bloke could handle himself in a fight. Lead Belly's at number 3. So you know when we get a murderer at number 3 that you know we're now dealing with something pretty heavyweight. So at number 2, who are you expecting at number 2? Think about it. Who's harder than Lead Belly? Think about it. Now picture what that person looks like. Right? Well, this is the bloke I've gone for.
You know, talking about the other people I know in the industry, Ed Sheeran is a very, very confident human being, and quite rightly so, because he's a very talented musician. He has an insane confidence.
James Blunt. James Blunt. I've picked on them all. Every namby-pamby face songwriter, middle of the road schlock songwriter I've gone for, haven't I? I've done David Gray. I've done them all. All of them. Anybody who sits there whining away with their dull songs, I have had a go at, haven't I? Except for James Blunt. And there's a reason for that. James Blunt has got 2 attributes. Firstly, I am never going to criticise him because he's too funny online, right? He has that rapier wit that Pete Townsend has and every great English gentleman has. James Blunt is an English gentleman. It's different to a Lead Belly. You know, this is a sort of chap that will go, watch it there, fellow. You need to desist with your aggressive behaviour. And you will think, oh, it's just some posh English bloke. I'm not going to mess with them. And before you know it, out of their walking stick, they pull a tiny little sword and they plunge it deep into your heart. Right? Now, those sorts of skills were developed in the greatest army in the history of armies, except probably the Roman army and maybe the German army, the Nazi army, and maybe the Americans as well. Right, but the 4th greatest army of all time that colonialised half the bloody world is the British Army. Right, so I'm now going to salute our armed forces. We cannot do anything in the United Kingdom without having some sort of procession in London. And when we have a procession in London, we have all them bloody soldiers from the Victoria. They're still dressed up like it's the Victoria, and they all come marching past with their swords like this on their horses like that. And the Queen would sit there and she'd salute them all, and we would all cheer it and eat our bloody sandwiches outside on a table just because one of them's getting married. You know that's not going to get very long, but you don't care. Our armed forces are bloody amazing. And James Blunt wasn't just in them, he was a captain or something like that. This bloke has been out fighting wars, right? He knows, he's like Bear Grylls. You stick him in the forest, he can look after himself. You know, he'd be in there slicing a bloody sheep's eye and drinking the juice out as sustenance, you know, weeing on his hands for no reason whatsoever. James Blunt can survive. You know, he can make a house out of, leaves and twigs and stuff like that. He'd get a shelter, he'd put the brown mud all over his face, and then he's in there. He'd fashion some sort of thing. He'd kill you with a tin opener. He's one of those types, and he's been there and he's done it. James Blunt, I'm not going to mess with. He's got a rapier wit, and he's probably got a rapier. And the other thing is, I think, I've heard reports that he's actually been quite traumatised by the things he's seen in the war. And so, that's going to go one way or the other. And I hope with James Blunt it goes the other way and turns him into a bit of a psycho, because I need that to be there for him to make number 2 on this list, but he is only number 2. But yes, James Blunt, I think I like James Blunt. I love him. I don't like his music much, but who does? None of us do we? God, you're beautiful. It's true. You're beautiful. Right, that's one, that is awful. But the thing is, I respect him for it. Because there he is, out in the open, in the bloody snow, stripping off naked, right? I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be shivering and can't do it anymore. And then what's he do? He then jumps off a great big thing into some icy water. Why? Because he's trained to do so. right? He'd jump into that water, come up, mud on his face, knife in his teeth, he'd swim across, go up to some sort of Banana Republic diplomat, he'd be out there, slice their throat, back in the water before you could say bloody James Bond. Right? Never not James Blunt. It's like his name even sounds a little bit like James Bond. But what if imagine if you got James Bond, but then you made it rhyme with what James is really if he needs to be. I'm not saying he is. You know what rhymes with Blunt? Right? Come on, keep up. Imagine taking that rhyme and combine it with James Bond. You get James Blunt. It's the hardest. James Blunt. Blunt object. James Blunt. I mean, who can beat him? He's the hardest man in rock. Would you believe it? Except for who I've got a number one. I don't even know where to start with this. Right. Jazz rock is the hardest genre, without a doubt. There's so many aggressive, violent types that could kill you. And not kill you in a sort of out of control way, in a trained way. They know what they're doing, right? So many of them. That's the first thing. The second thing is that, as you know, on any list, if I can get the Mahavishnu Orchestra at the top, I will. And the Mahavishnu Orchestra, not only being the greatest band of all time, right? The Mahavishnu Orchestra contains within it the hardest man in music history, which of course is the great Mr. Billy Cobham. And Mr. Cobham has been on this show. You know, now Billy Cobham now is 81 years old, right? And he's got old, you know, but you can still see he's a fine figure of a man. If you watch him drumming, he's still drumming. He's incredible, right? But this guy, I believe, in the 1960s was in the Marines. Now, that's the hardest training you're going to get. Now, he could have left the Marines and let it all go, but he didn't. Once he joined the Mahavishnu Orchestra, he realised the energy required to play like that for 3 hours would mean that he would have to continue doing his Marines training, which he did. And he worked very hard at that, you know, doing all the gym stuff and the fighting and, you know, knowing how to run up beaches and take out, you know, Banana Republic types. All of that stuff, he kept it up all the way through the classic jazz rock era. So in 1971, when everybody looked like this, Billy looks like this. Now, I want you to look at that man. That is almost like, that is the embodiment of man, as far as I'm concerned. That is the embodiment of man. You don't mess with that, right? Imagine the training that's in that body. Imagine the skills that Billy Cobham has that we don't know about, right? And we don't know about it, do we? We don't know. We don't know much about him before he joins the Mahavishnu Orchestra. He played with Horace Silver, yes, you know, and that's no, you know, why would Horace Silver have such a trained hard man on drums? We don't know why that would be. We don't know. So it's very hard. I've tried to unearth as much as I possibly can, but you don't end up looking like that, especially without steroids in the 1970s when nobody looked like that. You know, even Sylvester Stallone and those types didn't look like that. It wasn't until Arnold Schwarzenegger came along with his new way of training that people started to look like that. But Billy didn't obviously do what Arnie did, right? That's the real deal there, that is. Mr. Billy Cobham, the hardest of them all, right? So, that's the end of my video. What have we learned from this? I would say, if you sit back and think about it and really consider what I've just talked about, we've learned absolutely nothing at all from this in any shape or form. But what we've been able to do is to take some beloved characters and place onto them a false narrative that you may have found funny for half an hour. Within that false narrative that is the grease that keeps you here throughout this video to the end, you may have learnt a few things. You know, that Billy Cobham was in the Marines, perhaps. You know, that Phil Collen could do like Mai Tai kickboxing. You know, that John Lennon was in a gang before the Beatles that used to go out fighting. You know, the little bits of facts that you don't know about people, but that's about it, really. You know, now, of course, nobody on this list, perhaps James Blunt is still able to administer those sorts of skills, but the rest of them have gone. Many of them, Leadbelly's gone, Billy Cobham's not, Phil Collins not, Tony Iommi's not, Roger Daltrey's not, Joe Zawinul's gone, Lennon's gone, Elvis has gone. They're passing into myth. And the truth is, as they pass into myth, we will be putting these stupid narratives onto them. Narratives that should never be put onto a person, but we will. And I have done today, but I've done it in an ironic way. And that is about the best you're going to get. That's about the only bit of wisdom I can extract from this video. But we're 30 minutes in. It's occupied the space it needed to do. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gave you a little bit of a smile. Please don't take it too seriously. You know, it's something I do on this channel, is make these types of funny videos. People like them. They're the most popular videos. I'll do a Philosophy Sunday one next. What shall I have a think about? Don't know. Let me go away and have a ponder on that now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next one.